Hello everyone. This webinar, I welcome you all. Due to the impact of COVID, we are not able to host the seminar this semester, and all other events which have been there in the faculty are postponed. So, with the inspiration of Dean sir, we and our team managed to organize this first webinar through the whatever resources we had. We have our speakers from the faculty and outside the faculty. We have our chief guest, Mrs. Jyoti Sikka ma'am. She is Additional Advocate General of Uttar Pradesh. The idea to conduct on this very issue is due to the far-reaching effect of this topic. This is a burning topic, as we all know that China is being responsible, according to the media reports and all other inputs. The IB of all the countries are searching that from where this coronavirus came. After the coronavirus, the international law will be having its impact on the whole world. As we can see that the responsibility of WHO and all other UN organizations are itself in a question mark. So therefore, we have these speakers. They will discuss upon as to how the international law will be having its impact on the trade, on the countries, on the political scenarios of the world, and all other things. I welcome you all, being the student convener. I wish that this webinar will be a huge success, and now I must hand over it to Panch Rishi sir. He will be delivering his lecture on the first topic. Thank you.
Hello participants. Now I would welcome Shri Panch Rishi Sharma, Faculty of Law, University of Lucknow, to deliver his lecture.
Shall I start? Is it audible and clear to all of you?
Yes, sir, audible. Now you can start.
Am I audible and clear to all of you? Shall I start?
Yes, sir, it is audible. Now you can start.
Hello?
हेलो
हाँ जी
गुड आफ्टरनून सर मैं हरि गोविंद दुबे बोल रहा हूँ सर वो आप सर ज्वाइन कर लीजिए यूट्यूब लाइव वाला सर
ज्वाइन कर लिया है वो आप
ओके
होगे तो बार बार आओगे करोगे तो कट जाएगा कॉल बार बार
ओके ओके थैंक
Okay, hello. Thank you first of all, and I welcome all the participants, whoever is listening to it live, and whoever will be a part of it in coming days, you will be listening and hearing about it. I'm really thankful to the organizers, and I'm really thankful to Ahmed sir for giving me this opportunity to talk to you on this very prominent issue. And I'm also thankful for all the students, team Saksham, Hari Govind Dubey, and everybody, whoever is a part of it. You guys are doing a very good job. It is very important to take an issue or discuss an issue which is so important for contemporary world. As I see, they have asked me to talk about two things. First is the role of WHO in controlling or in analyzing this pandemic. And next is also on how India is going to respond to this pandemic. So I'll be covering both areas, and I'll be talking on both areas to you. Pandemic or any situation anywhere in the world should not be studied in isolation. It should have been studied in a very compact, very an interdisciplinary manner. Only then we could understand the gravity of the situation. Why we are not able to understand the gravity of situation? Because we have not seen China from Chinese prism. We have also not seen WHO from WHO's prism. And we have also not seen India from the prism, we should see, from an Indian prism, the way India is tackling this problem and the way world is tackling this problem. This pandemic has brought us into a very difficult situation where we are also questioning impact of certain organizations who have been a part of our global history and also were predicted as the path breaker of the world. किसी ने डाउट नहीं किया होगा कि WHO जैसी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन पर कभी कोई इस तरह की क्रेडिबिलिटी का संकट आएगा. शायद हमने कभी गौर भी नहीं किया क्या WHO इस तरह की ऑर्गेनाइजेशन हो सकती है जिसपे क्रेडिबिलिटी का कोई संकट आए या जिसकी क्रेडिबिलिटी किसी भी रूप में क्वेश्चनेबल हो. इसलिए ये बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाता है कि हम समझें कि ये किस तरह की ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है और क्या कमियां रही इस WHO द्वारा इस पूरी पैंडेमिक को रोकने के लिए और कौन से ऐसे स्टैंड पॉइंट्स थे जिनसे WHO इस प्रॉब्लम को और बेहतर तरीके से रोक सकता था और बेहतर तरीके से कंट्रोल कर सकता था. I'll not go in factual details of this issue, but WHO को समझने के लिए और WHO की कमी को समझने के लिए पहले हमें WHO का स्ट्रक्चर समझना चाहिए. WHO is an United Nations part organization which is specifically designed to control pandemic, outbreak of viruses, bacteria and other form of illness, other form of communicable and non-communicable diseases, issuing guidelines for global action and also regional action and country-specific actions. So the biggest problem with WHO is WHO was formed to be a reactive organization, and WHO has always reacted for some issue, whether it is a cholera outbreak or whether it is a outbreak, polio eradication, and it is always a reactive organization because WHO do not have any investigative body of its own. So it depends. It is a very reactive organization, generally reacts on a problem that has already emerged. This everyday press conferences that Trump holds at his White Office, like White House Oval Office. So in that conference on 15th April 2020, he said that we will halt all the fundings to WHO. And then onwards, like Tedros, who is the head of, rather Director General of WHO, has also responded that you are making it politicized. We should not politicize it. So it's all started from there. So first of all, we should see what is WHO funding and how WHO gets its fund. Actually, there are three bodies that fund WHO. Primarily, it is done by the member states. Member states means all the states who are the member of WHO. Then the other part of the funding comes from the philanthropic organizations like Melinda Gates Foundation, Save the Children, and any such organizations like that. And then the last type of funding comes from international organizations like the United Nations, European Union, and other such organizations fund that. And if you see the budget of WHO, which is available on the site, you can go and see that yourself. Like almost 35% of the funding comes from the member state, and around 30% funding comes from these philanthropic organizations, charitable organizations like Melinda Gates and the things I've talked about. Other 20 to 22% funding comes from international organizations like European Union also funds, and United Nations also funds. So the problem here is that it is a very evenly divided funding. And when you see that there is also another type of funding when there is a voluntary funding, that all these fundings are voluntary. Any state can say that this year we will not be able to fund, or we are not going to fund because we are not agreeing to WHO's policy, or we'll stop the fund, as it happened with Donald Trump saying that we will stop the funding. So it all started like that. The funding structure is something like that. If you go in details of the funding, there is like the total budget of WHO is 5,623 million US dollars, and around 956 million dollars is from assessed contribution, 4,328 is from specific voluntary contribution, majorly comes from member states and philanthropic organizations. There is a $160 million funding for voluntary contribution, and around $180 million funding for pandemic control and other things. But among all this data, you should see certain key factors. You should see how much funding is coming from American government. American government is contributing more than 15% of WHO funding. And when you analyze it in a number, it is $553 million. $553 million are funded from United States. And United States is also funding from other philanthropic organizations of United States, like Melinda Gates Foundation funds around 10% of WHO. Rotary International, it's an international philanthropic organization, but huge contribution to Rotary International comes from Europe and America, and which is also funding around 5% of total WHO structure. And that's how there is a unique funding structure in which you would get this thing that around 30 to 35% of the funding of WHO in last few years has come from America. So if America is going to stop the funding, it will raise substantial block to the expenditure of WHO. Other fundings are there like World Bank funds 3.4%, UNOCHO funds 6%, European Union funds 3.3%, United Nations fund 5%. But the substantial amount of funding is coming from America. It is that substantial that you will, when you compare it with India, India only funds 1% of total WHO budget. So the maximum funding is from America, and when now America is stopping the funding, it's a big jolt. And I was just going through Australian news. Australian health minister has also said something grave about WHO, and we will reconsider WHO funding. They have said that. Norway has also said the same thing. So the same sentiments is coming from America, from Europe, from Australia. So this is a very typical situation for WHO. Why and how WHO has reached to this situation, that you need to understand the way in which WHO funds. Like polio eradication is a primary program of WHO. WHO funds more than $1 billion for that. Whereas the outbreak prevention, that you have seen, the corona, there was Ebola, there was SARS, there was another viruses like HIV and all. So outbreak prevention, it is only $225 million. So you see that outbreak prevention is of 1/4 to a disease which has been established like polio eradication. That leads me to my first point that I made, that WHO is specifically a reactive organization. ये एक बहुत बड़ा एरर है WHO के सेटअप में कि WHO जनरली उन चीजों पर काम करता है जो डिजीज ऑलरेडी स्प्रेड हो चुकी हो, जिनका आउटब्रेक आउटब्रेक कंट्रोल करने में इसका बहुत अच्छा रिकॉर्ड कभी नहीं रहा है, whether it has been SARS or whether it has been Ebola or whether it has been any other disease like HIV, how it transmitted from Africa to all over the world. We all know this thing. So the problem here is that the organizational structure of WHO is itself faulty, because it is not a impromptu organization or proactive organization or preemptory organization. It do not has an investigative body जहाँ पर ये अपने साइंटिस्ट या अपने डॉक्टर्स भेज सके एक impartial inquiry कराने के लिए कि where outbreak has occurred. Like in Wuhan, आप विश्वास नहीं करेंगे, it took almost 2 months for WHO to send its doctors team to Wuhan to conduct a non-Chinese survey. It was the first non-Chinese survey to Wuhan's wet market. It was very late because WHO in its organization, it's not a preemptive organization, it is a reactive organization. And same goes with its funding. Like if you see the funding structure of WHO, most of the money goes to Africa, like 32.4% of the money goes to Africa, the Mediterranean, which includes China, takes 27.3%. Operational costs are 20%. South and Southeast Asia, like India, comes within the South and Southeast Asia club. It takes 8%. India's total funding is around 1.2%. So India gives 1%, takes back 1.2 to 1.5% of total WHO spending. Whole of Europe takes 6.5%. Pacific takes 5.6%. America takes 1.2%. So interestingly, America is contributing 30 to 35%, but whereas it is taking only 1.2%. So Donald Trump is getting angry and boo-booing the situation to WHO is quite visible and quite clear. But the thing is not like that, because controlling an outbreak of a virus or maintaining global health is not a question for one state. Like whoever is the richest state shall contribute more. Now, so this is what about funding. Until unless you don't understand the funding and organizational structure of WHO, it is really difficult to find out the flaws in WHO's system. Now, so second part of my talk would be how the WHO functions. WHO has a very stringent procedure, so I'm not going into detail with that, but I'll be telling certain key elements of how WHO functions. WHO has a headquarters in Geneva, and they conduct an annual general meeting. They call it World Health Assembly, in which delegates from all member states come and discuss the agenda prepared by the executive board. Now, this executive board is really important. This executive board is 15 to 25 members body which prepares an agenda that how WHO is going to implement annually and 5-year plans, 5-year plan for WHO. Now, you will see there is an amazing anecdote for this, that America has not sent an officer for the executive board since 2015. So the executive board decides three things. First is WHO policy. Second thing is appointment of director general, and third thing is review and approve the budget of WHO. Now, all three things are important because in WHO policy, appointment of DG and review and approval of the budget, China plays a very vital role. The current Director General Tedros was appointed due to Chinese pressure. And the important thing is that the person against whom he was competing was an Indian nominee. So how Indian nominee got defeated and how Chinese patronage played a very vital role in appointment of the DG of WHO, the current DG of WHO, Dr. Tedros, is very questionable. And we should ask serious question that under what circumstances it has happened. World and global organizations have ignored WHO. They have never thought that DG or Director General of WHO could be that important post. But it is really important when the situation is something like this. So the current DG was appointed, Dr. Tedros, and he has been saying that it is that we should not do politics. We should not do politics when it is about no, pandemic control. But he should also see that how he got this post. He also got this post because of Chinese influence and politics and arm twisting. So it is really clear. You should see the Tedros, the current DG's background. He was the Ethiopian health minister from 2005 to 2012. Then he became the foreign affairs minister from 2012 to 2016, in which he got in touch with Chinese agency, and that's how he was nominated in 2017. And actually, it was China who capitulated him at the post of DG WHO. And how he helped China is a critical issue, because you see, on 14 January, WHO has said this thing that there is no evidence for human-to-human transmission of this virus. It's a very serious thing. 14 January is like in later part of 2019, there was certain evidences of outbreak of this virus, but still WHO sent a statement that there is no evidence for human-to-human transmission, believing on Chinese report and believing on Chinese propaganda. And Chinese are really good at portraying or portraying an image what that they want to predict, like not believing in Dr. Li Weliang's story. Li Weliang was the first orthodontist, the dentist who revealed the story that there is a new virus coming, new SARS virus is coming, which is affecting respiratory syndromes and creating respiratory problems. It's like pneumonia, like problem. We know how he was sidelined, how there was a charge of spreading rumors, false rumors. Nowadays, I was reading a Chinese report that he is considered as a martyr. So it's way too late. So ignoring certain Chinese whistleblowers report to WHO. Just imagine, 20th January, there was no advisory from WHO where there has been a huge virus outbreak in China. There were more than 100 people affected outside China. Even then, there was no advisory from from WHO that we should put a travel restriction. Whereas before that, he said that the DG Tedros said that we should not restrict trade and communication and transport across the nations towards or from China. The reason being, this virus is not human-to-human transmissible, and China has controlled it very well. It took almost 2 months for WHO to declare that this issue is a pandemic. So this is the situation that WHO has put into itself. There is huge organizational errors, there is huge financial errors, there is huge strategic errors to WHO. Now, how to blame, when to blame, and what is the structure of blame that we can put into China? WHO is our question. But before understanding WHO, we should understand that what is the role of WHO and how WHO helps. For analyzing, like, there are certain mistakes WHO has committed, no doubt about it. First mistake what WHO has committed is a lack of promptness. Now, whenever there is an outbreak of a virus, it is mandatory that World Health Organization should be very prompt for that virus control, which was not seen in the case of WHO. There was no advisory, there was no restriction on travel from WHO side until it became such a huge pandemic. Like, it took WHO to decide it a global pandemic when there were more than 100 cases outside China, more than 100 reported cases. Like, there are certain key things which China ignored. Like, WHO ignored. Actually, WHO praised China for sharing the genome of the virus. But if you see that they shared the genome of the virus after 14 days of the outbreak, and genome of the virus is easily, you can decode the genome of the virus within 2 or 3 days. China specifically delayed in telling the world the genome of the virus. More than 3 weeks it took WHO to send an advisory that we should put a travel ban. Before that, so many countries has already put bans, like Taiwan has put a ban, Australia has put in ban on travel from or towards China. But imagine if WHO has acted promptly, we could have saved such so many lives, so many, so much of money could have been saved, so many lives could have been saved, and the world would have been in a very different situation. तो ये एक कलंक है डब्ल्यूएचओ के माथे पे जिसको डब्ल्यूएचओ को धोने में सदियां लग जाएंगी. This remark that it is not human to human transmissionable, this remark that you don't need to panic, the situation is under control, this remark that there is no need of travel ban, these are certain things which shows the immaturity of the organization. And this immaturity could be politically influenced because Tedros was a Chinese prompted candidate for DG's position. The world is not aware about that. The second thing, second mistake that that WHO did is it was really very much China centric. Like when there was an outbreak of virus in January, Tedros visited China, Beijing, met Xi Jinping, shook his hand, and then came back to WHO's headquarters at Geneva and praised a lot about China, how China has controlled it, said it has played a global role in controlling the pandemic, how China helped the world in not spreading the virus. This all is utter nonsense what Dr. Tedros was saying. It shows that it is too much China centric. It was believing the Chinese propaganda intentionally or unintentionally. Now China is a country which believes in putting a propaganda, whether it was Deng Xiaoping's idea of following right while saying left, how Deng Xiaoping changed the country, look like a leftist country while working on capitalism. It's in front of us. There is a very famous line by Deng Xiaoping that it does not matter that cat is black or cat is white. Cat has to get in chase and get the mice. That you have to have capitalism if you need to grow. It does not matter it is left centric or right centric. So believing Chinese propaganda is another mistake or a brutal mistake and a key mistake on WHO's side, that it has not intentionally or unintentionally audited the Chinese report. And there is also one problem here that WHO do not have an investigative machinery of its own. So it depends upon the data which are there from different states. So member states provide a report and they believe it, but they should have done a broader, a much more impartial and independent study of Chinese data, because Chinese data have always been questionable. Like 2002 SARS virus outbreak, still there has to be question asked how how this outbreak has happened in China. And you see last pattern of last 40, 50 years, like 6 or 7 decades, maybe you could say, that all the viruses are coming either from China, originated from China, outbreaks in China. So Chinese propaganda theory is there, and why WHO has not gone through it? It's always a question. Why WHO has not put a restriction on travel or declared pandemic way too late? It has not given world a chance to react on the issue. That is a main area. That is a mistake that China did. The incompetence of WHO in conducting an impartial study of COVID is also an issue. But there is also one other mistake of China which I really want to point out, that people are ignored, that it's policy error. Like China has been saying this policy that the only way to control this virus is test, 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 and test. There has to be increase in global testing. Although India has not followed this formula, reason being is that from where we will be doing tests. These test kits are generally Chinese import kits, and the world is dependent upon Chinese import kits. How it is possible for a world to do test other than importing kits from China. And importing kits from China, which may be defective, as we have seen in the case of Italy, we have seen in the case of Germany, we have seen in the case of Pakistan, we have also seen in the case of India that China is sending the defective kits, or certain kits, rapid action kits are defective. And again, it is all tenders going to China and China's big pharmaceutical company. So whatever it is, test formula is not that good, because India has not done that many testing. What India has done is testing only in red zones and orange zones, which helped India, because with more testing you will get more positive patients. Is not a foolproof criteria, because India is testing in the areas which are more hit by corona. Still, India's growth is not as big as the countries who are testing more. So testing has no connection with the control to the virus outbreak. Rather than putting a country into lockdown or huge travel restriction, social distancing, physical distancing is better criteria to control the pandemic, because it directly relates to how the pandemic has spread. So under this situation, WHO roles is really critical. Another critical area of WHO role is not analyzing the impact of asymptomatic COVID patients. So WHO till date do not believe that there is a asymptomatic COVID patient, where there are evidences in India, there are evidences in China that there are asymptomatic COVID patients. There is also one mistake from WHO, which is about the second wave of COVID. So there is no advisory from WHO side on second wave of COVID wherever it is emerging, like in Italy or in Germany or in China. So these are the fine. These are like I've highlighted more than 8 or 9 mistakes, around 8 mistakes that WHO has committed. But we should put that into theory, that how WHO has committed this mistake. Now, WHO's role is in 3 dimensions. First dimension is pre-pandemic. In pre-pandemic, where the pandemic has not started or outbreak just has happened, WHO's role is always questionable. Whether it was in SARS-1 or SARS-2 or Ebola, there was no preemptive struck from WHO. There could be a factor that WHO is incompetent to do this. Reason being that WHO is so much dependent upon country's own assessment of the problem. So that is one area where WHO role is always questionable since its inception in pre-pandemic disease control. Now, there is also second side during pandemic, which the situation which we are in. We can say that WHO's track record. I'm not saying that this thing in respect of COVID. I'm saying WHO's total situation. So during pandemic, I could say that the role is below satisfactory or somewhere satisfactory. I'm not saying regarding COVID. What I'm saying is regarding the situation regarding the situation of WHO. So it has been satisfactory, but it is very much below satisfactory when we understand the situation of COVID. Now, because of its non-clarity about guidelines. For example, take one example that about mask. WHO's advisory is there that the person who are not affected or do not show symptoms should not wear mask. But if everybody is wearing mask, we can reduce the risk of corona to 85 to 90%. So this is a very simple technique which WHO should have given to all of the world or distributed masks to all over the world, because it is generally from nasal and oral cavity that viruses we ingest. So this is one mistake. Take the example of Taiwan. Now, Taiwan is not a member of WHO because of Chinese opposition, because China do not consider it even a state. So Taiwan issued was the first country to put a ban to travel from and towards China. In this situation, Taiwan also said that we will distribute free masks to all the people, and people should wear one layer or two layer or three layer, whatever form of mask available. That helped Taiwan to be the lowest growth rate of corona. And you would be amazed that Taiwan has sent an advisory to WHO way before this thing, that it was in, I think it's December 26th. And again, one advisory was sent from Taiwan to WHO on 10th January 2020, that we believe and we have reason to believe that this virus is human to human transmission, can transmit from one human being to another human being. WHO has ignored the report of Taiwan, maybe under Chinese pressure or something else. But this Taiwan response, or the story of Taiwan, tells us that how inconsiderate WHO was during and before the pandemic. Now, there is also third role for a WHO, which is after pandemic. We can say overall since 1948 till now, WHO's role is satisfactory. But with respect to Corona, we have our doubts because of the second wave coming, because of not taking preemptive and reactive actions. We could say that the current situation of WHO is really critical, and critical to the extent that it is not realizing its mistake. Now, there are two ways to reform WHO, and both are contradictory ways. One way is that we should give more power and more funding to WHO so that it could establish more reactive organization, more impromptu organization, more preemptive organizations. More doctors and more teams should be there who could go to countries and conduct a study. But there is also another side of the coin, that China and North Korea are such countries. Like if there is an outbreak of a virus in China, and if China is not allowing the team of WHO to conduct a study, or if WHO is functioning under a big country like China, who is the second biggest donor after America to WHO. So this situation will be really, really critical, that how these countries have so much of domination about these ages old bodies. And that's why I say that all the organizations that have been made, this Kelsenian model of these organizations, or this modern model of international organization, are born from the dust of Second World War. ये द्वितीय विश्व युद्ध की राख से बनी हुई ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है, और इनमें बहुत ज्यादा जरूरत है प्रोसीजरल, ऑर्गेनाइजेशनल, स्ट्रक्चरल चेंज की. एंड अगर ये चेंज दिखेगा, then only we could realize that these things could improve in the way we want, in the manner we want, and that is the biggest crisis of the situation. The biggest crisis currently is that China is China, America, Germany, all these big countries have so much domination over these organizations. See the situation of WTO or World Intellectual Property Organization or WHO. They are under so much of domination from these big states. So much of politics is involved in these big states, like the appointment of Ted Ross, the current DG, like how WHO was following the Chinese pattern, how it was supporting China in controlling the pandemic. So this is the situation. And in this situation, we also should analyze the things which will come after or during, when we are about to end this corona pandemic. There would be a propaganda war. Propaganda war means when America will say that this virus is impromptu from China, and China will say that this virus is impromptu by America, and so many others. And in this impromptu war, it is really important that we gather and we get information which are more needed, much more vibrant. And for that, discussions like these, reading issues regarding WHO, analyzing WHO is really important. And for that, I'm really thankful for all the organizing team for giving me space to speak on WHO. I think I have 5 or 6 minutes, so I'll speak a bit on how would be India's response to this pandemic. I believe that there are only three ways to respond to this pandemic. The first way is to get a medical cure for this problem. You see how remdesivir, the drug which was evolved for Ebola, has been reactive towards this issue. You also seen a successful use of plasma therapy. I'm really happy that the hospital in Lucknow, the KGMU, is also operating this plasma therapy, the first government hospital to operate the plasma therapy in India. Then we have also seen the impact of hydroxychloroquine on pre-COVID exposure patients. So there are certain good news from India. We have also seen the way India has controlled it. There are two very important models. One is Bhilwara model of Rajasthan. Another one is a model in Kerala, Kojiwar model of Kerala. And both have done very well. We have also seen seven sisterly states, how they have responded, how Andaman has responded. So there are certain good news from India, the way India is responding to this problem. But for medically curing it, a vaccine is a must, and vaccine will evolve. I'm a positivist, I'm an optimist, so I believe that this vaccine will arrive soon. But how that vaccine should be given to such a huge number, and can India procure that many of vaccine, or will India remain into social distancing in coming few years? I do believe that social distancing shall be the, or rather, I would not say social distancing. Socially, people cannot be distinct, but physical distancing shall be the norm of this country. This public spitting and all these not following the oral and hand hygiene shall be the criteria how we can medically cure, at least slow the growth of this pandemic. The second cure for India, the second way India would going to handle this problem is, you see the approach of India regarding economy. Yes, economy would be under a huge pressure after this thing. It is really important to revive the economy after lockdown. We should see and assess how much is the loss. My heart goes to the poor farmers, poor workers, migrant laborers who have traveled and who have put themselves into risk, who have very less resources. And I'm really looking forward that how government is going to respond to this. This certainly cannot be done by the tax report, the infamous force report that is submitted by IRS officers to finance ministry. That is heavy. That is to lay down heavy taxation, because that will bring a vicious circle into economy where the money, the tax, more taxation economy are never good for the world. We have seen this thing. And the third cure for this is the geopolitical cure. The geopolitical cure is one field where I feel that India can play a very vital role, because we are leading to the world of multilateral, the new multilateralism. And in this new multilateralism, it is really important that India should take its position, India should take its stand. India is very cautious. It has not said anything about WHO, it has not said anything about China. It may be right for the time, but there would be time where India has to take a strong hold, a strong position in the new geopolitical world and in the new multilateral world. But I believe that the new multilateral world would not have such organization like WHO the way it is working right now, and for sure that the new multilateral world would not have a director general like Dr. Tedros, the way he has responded to the problem. So, as countries are blaming Tedros, I'm also on their side that it is WHO and Dr. Tedros were at the position where they could have saved so many people, and they have failed to do that. It is a responsibility. It is a time when WHO should come forward and take the responsibility for what we have done. So this is an opportunity for us as well, that let's be more democratic in our approach, in our ideas, in our even in our when we are criticizing something, let's be more reasonable, and when you are appreciating something, let's be more reasonable. So that is the time. It's a self-reflectory time for all of us, self-reflectory time for nations, states, individuals, and the way we reflect it will will make our world better or worse. So it is up to us. So that's my point on WHO and India's response. I hope I could make some sense to you. If you have any question or any query, you can send that, and I would love to answer that question or query, whatever is there.
I would like to thank you, Panch Rishi sir, for such an informative session. And now I would like to welcome Dr. Seema Singh for his lecture, who is an alumni of Faculty of Law, University of Lucknow. Now she is a professor in Delhi University. Welcome, ma'am.
Good evening to all of you. I know it is going to be a kind of monologue, but first of all, I would like to extend my thanks to my respected professor, Professor C.P. Singh sir, Professor Mohammad Ahmad sir, Saksham, and all other organizers. Being the alumnus of Lucknow University, it is definitely going to be a special kind of feeling. Though unfortunately, I am interacting to all of you from Delhi, but I hope that one day physically I would be there to interact to all of you. We all know that the whole world is facing a serious problem of COVID-19. Now the important issue arises in such type of circumstances is what responsibility should be fixed for China, because we all are aware that this COVID-19 virus, it started spreading from Wuhan. In Wuhan there is a laboratory of virology. There are two allegations on China. The first allegation is it is a bioweapon. And the second allegation, which China is saying, ki actually it is not a bioweapon, but it was a naturally created virus which transmitted from human to human and which basically started from the wet market of Wuhan. Now, when we talk about the wet market of Wuhan, and suppose what China is saying that is the correct position, then to whether any liability of the China upon the China should be fixed or not, and if the liability should be fixed, then under what provisions, what clause, what conventions, and what kind of international laws it is possible. I will try my level best to keep my presentation as simple as possible. So I will just discuss the things in a very crisp and clear manner with best of my abilities. Suppose we are going to rely on the statement of China that is this is not a biological weapon, but then too on the basis of the available circumstantial evidences, it seems quite evident that China was hiding the information. What kind of information was hiding by China? China was hiding this information that this disease can be transferred from human to human. By the time this information reached to the rest of the world, considerable loss would already have been caused. The reason is all the spreaders, many infected persons who traveled from Wuhan to rest of the world, they became the carrier of this COVID-19 virus. Now, the first issue is whether China can be held responsible in this type of circumstances when basically China was not creating a biological weapon, but this virus is spread from Wuhan from its wet market. Remember, there is a treaty. The name of the convention, there is a convention. The name of the convention is Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora. What is the purpose of this treaty? The purpose of this treaty is to stop people from trading in and eating endangered species. Remember, in the year 2016, a proposal was passed to increase protection for pangolins, which plays a very instrumental role, which played a very instrumental role in spreading this COVID-19 virus from Wuhan. Because China is saying कि from bat it reached to pangolins, and pangolin is basically it is the flesh of the pangolin. It is very famous famous meat which is used by the people of China. So from there it has spread across the world. So the important issue is when this kind of resolution has been passed and then to China was selling the meat of pangolins, whether any kind of action is possible against China or not. The second important issue is nobody can deny this fact that because of China, the whole world is suffering. Lakhs of people have lost their lives, and the global economy is going to face a very serious condition. And obviously, in the coming decades, retrenchment, unemployment, and maybe increasing number of deaths, that is also quite possible. So whether it is intentional or it is unintentional, whether it is a biological weapon or it is not a biological weapon, in both the circumstances, on the basis of circumstantial evidences, it seems that China should be held responsible. But another important question here in this case is, suppose it is a biological weapon, then what would be the responsibility of China? Remember, China's behavior is obviously a threat to the global security and it constitutes violation of Chapter 7 of UN Charter. What Chapter 7 of UN Charter says? It authorizes United Nations Security Council to take action to maintain or restore international peace and security. But remember, here there is a very important barrier. And what is the barrier? The barrier is because China is the permanent member of United Nations Security Council. So if any resolution is going to be, any proposal is going to be brought under the UNSC against the China, then the China can exercise its special veto power. And then in that circumstances, it is going to be extremely difficult, not extremely difficult, but almost impossible to take any action in this way by United Nations Security Council against China. The second allegation over China is China has violated international health regulations of WHO. Remember, we should not forget that in all this story, the role of WHO is also very suspicious. Yesterday, the President of United States of America, Donald Trump, has said that US is seriously going to investigate against China and WHO about their role in spreading this pandemic. Now, the important issue in this case is when the head of the WHO is already under scanner, how much can we rely, how much we can rely on WHO for the violation of international health regulations by China? What regulation says? China has obviously delayed reporting to states that this epidemic is contagious. The affected countries can move to international tribunal for the violation of its obligation by China. But remember, to fix the responsibility of China for the violation of international health regulation, one thing is very important to be proved, that there was some deliberate action on the part of the China. If we are not able to fix the nexus between the China's action and this pandemic, between the China's role and this pandemic, then it seems quite difficult to take any kind of action against the China for the violation of international health regulations. Third aspect is, suppose we are going to believe, because several countries including United States of America is continuously saying that basically this COVID-19 is a biological weapon. Suppose it is a biological weapon. Firstly, it is extremely difficult to prove that it is a biological weapon unless and until China is going to allow other countries to investigate the matter. And it seems almost impossible that China is going to allow any external party or any other country to visit its Wuhan laboratory. So it's very difficult. But let's see what this biological weapon convention says. China is obviously, it is a party of biological weapon convention, and article 1 of the convention says that each state party to this convention undertakes never in any circumstances to retain microbial or other biological agents, whatever their origin or method of production. So remember, the purpose of the biological weapon is basically whoever is the signatory, they can never get involved themselves in the preparation of any kind of biological weapon. So here, the important issue is China is already the signatory of this biological weapon convention. United States of America is also the part of the same convention. But the problem is if the United States find China acted in breach of its obligation by its delay reporting, US could lodge a complaint, but again the complaint would be lodged only before the United Nations Security Council. Again, China is the permanent member before UNSC. So if any action is supposed to be taken against China, China again is going to exercise its veto power. China has developed, produced stock, though China is the signatory of 1972 Biological Weapon Convention, but obviously it seems quite difficult to punish China and for the violation of this convention. The reason being a sovereign nation, it is almost impossible that China is going to allow anybody's entry to investigate the matter. And if any action is going to be taken against China, then how the action would be executed? That is the another problem. That's why, though the US president has ordered investigation against the China and WHO, but it seems very difficult that any action actually possible in real terms. Any execution of any kind of order against China is possible in the present circumstances. It seems quite difficult. So that's why there is a big challenge to international law also, that if there are so many conventions, if there are so many treaties, if there are many organizations, and if they are not able to fix the responsibility of the China, then what is the utility of having so many conventions, so many treaties, and the bodies like United Nations or WHO? The third place where the action is possible, where the people are demanding that the action can be taken against China. Let's see whether any kind of action is possible against China under the International Criminal Court or not. International Criminal Court, first and the most important thing is only those countries who has ratified, they can approach International Criminal Court. Here in the important issue is China, Russia, and US, they have not ratified this treaty. The second biggest hurdle to explore a remedy under International Criminal Court is International Criminal Court cannot fix the responsibility of a country. International Criminal Court can fix the responsibility of an individual. So maybe the president of China can be held responsible. Maybe the chief of the virology lab can be held responsible. Maybe the chief of the Chinese army can be held responsible. But here, the important issue is China is not the part of this. China has not ratified this International Criminal Court. India and US and Russia, they are also have not ratified this International Criminal Court jurisdiction. But there is a clause, and what that clause says? That clause says that if United Nations Security Council is going to request to ICC, then in that circumstances ICC can investigate the matter. And remember, because the matter is related to fixing the criminal liability, without investigating the matter, the criminal liability of any individual belonging to any country cannot be fixed. Here in this case, China has not ratified it. The second important thing is, if we are going to opt the route of UNSC, again China is going to create a hurdle, because China is the permanent member of United Nations Security Council. So if United Nations Security Council even wants to request to ICC to take any action or to investigate the COVID-19 conspiracy against China, it is almost impossible that it could be happen, because definitely the China is going to exercise its veto power. Third, now the next possible remedy. The next possible remedy can be International Court of Justice. International Court of Justice can obviously provide a very effective remedy, and any country, whether they are the member or they are not the member of United Nations, they can approach to ICJ, International Court of Justice. ICJ has all power to fix the responsibility of China. But suppose, either independently or collectively, countries are moving to ICJ to take any action against China, and if ICJ is going to pass any order, being a sovereign nation, whether it would be possible for ICJ to execute its order. Again, the important issue here in the case of exercising the authority of ICJ is how much pressure collectively the countries are able to put against China. If collectively they are moving against China and they are able to get any order in their favor, then something might happen. But the way China is expanding its economic power, it seems quite difficult that the countries may come together, because even as of now we are seeing that still Russia has not made clear its position, that what its own opinion about this COVID-19 virus, how much China feels that how much Russia feels that China is guilty. It is not clear. The another important thing is whether European Union and America, they are ready to come together, because in the European Union different countries are speaking in different words. Some countries are not able to criticize China completely, so whether they all are ready to come together against China, that is going to be a $1 million question, and it seems as of now it seems quite difficult also. It will be able we will be able to predict it only at the end of the day, after calculating the entire loss which is going to be caused to the economy and to the life of the people belonging to different countries. But as of now it seems quite difficult. So obviously all the countries have right to explore remedy under ICJ, but if the ICJ is going to pass any order, then it is definitely going to be very difficult to execute this order against the sovereign country, which is China. And China is obviously, it's a very powerful country also. Now, what about United Nations Human Rights Council? There is a very surprising thing. Maybe many of you are aware, maybe many of you are not aware. America has opted out from United Nations Human Rights Council, but China is in. China is in, and there is one more important thing, that United Nations Human Rights Council is a subsidiary organ of United Nations General Assembly, which was established in the year 2006 as a replacement of United Nations Committee on Human Rights. It is considered as a very weak organization. The reason being it has only 47 countries. It has only 47 members. So obviously it is not going to be a very effective organization. China, which himself is the biggest violator of fundamental rights, received a seat in the consultative group of United Nations Human Rights Council. In 2018, after the withdrawal of US from United Nations Human Rights Council, China is trying to take away all the powers. China is trying to control this United Nations Human Rights Council. So if the China is in such a dominating position in the absentia of US, will it be possible for United Nations Human Rights Council even to pass any resolution against China? It seems very difficult, and having the strength of 47 members, it is actually very difficult that any kind of resolution can be passed against China. It means it is difficult to believe that a resolution condemning the behavior of behavior of China can also be passed by this council. Now, there is one more important thing. China, if refuses trial in ICJ, as per Article 49 and 51 of UN Charter, US and other states could suspend their international obligation to China in order to force being to accept responsibility. So whether the Beijing is going to can be forced sufficiently to accept this responsibility, that is another important question which we have already discussed. Now, if we are going to analyze the present circumstances at the global level, then China is basically trying to be a very strong economic power. China wants to break the dominance of United Nations, European Union, and China also wants to break the dominance of United States. China wants to make a shift of the center of economic power from European Union and America to the Asia. And everything is happening just to gain more and more economic power, because we have seen that during this time period of crisis, Chinese companies are going to purchase share when they are going to crash like anything. China is buying more and more share, and very recently we have seen that India has also made certain changes in its FDI rule to stop the interference or encroachment of China in the domain of Indian economy, because this expansion policy of China is very threatful for the entire world. Now, we all know that China is also the part of World Trade Organization. But the important issue is whether any action is possible against China by World Trade Organization. We all are aware that what basically World Trade Organization do. World Trade Organization is a kind of facilitator. China is the part of WTO, but since past few years, US is constantly raising objection over the role of World Trade Organization. And what is the reason of the objection? The reason of the objection is China, which is one of the largest manufacturer in the world and the second largest economy of the world, is still considered as a developing country as per WTO rules. US is continuously opposing this status of China, and US is demanding that now China cannot avail benefits by declaring itself as a developing country when it has all the characteristics of a developed nation. China does not want to give up this status because China is availing different kind of benefits being the developing country. So Donald Trump has already said that he is losing faith in the organizations like WTO. So whether WTO can take any action against China, expulsion of China from WTO is possible. Honestly speaking, expulsion of China from WTO is not possible. It is not possible. If three-fourth members are going to pass a resolution in WTO against China, then the status of most favored state can be taken away. Countries can approach to ICJ also to fix the tortious liability of China, but being a sovereign state, how action would be possible against China? That is again a $1 million question. So WTO is going to take any effective action? It is not possible. ICJ is going to take any action against China, will be able to take any successful action against China? That again seems impossible. Then what would be the possibility? The WTO is an effective organization which is going to play a very instrumental role in world trade. But all the countries who are the part of the WTO, they are also engaged in bilateral agreement independently from various nations. So obviously, the countries which are the part of the World Trade Organization, they can take certain actions independently against China to stop its expansion within their territories. Like very soon, we have seen that many countries have tried to amend their FDI rules. And what is the purpose of amending these FDI rules? The basic purpose of amending these FDI rules is to stop the expansion of China. Stop expansion of China as an economic power. So if we are going through the WTO rules, again it is very difficult that any action can be taken against China. But yes, independently, different countries can make or can change certain regulations to regulate the interference of China in their own economy. Indirectly, like suppose in the case of India, uh, 1 or 2 year back, the people started saying that we should boycott Chinese goods. Such kind of action can be taken against China independently by the state, that they are going to regulate the interference of China in their economy. But WTO as an organization is going to be is in the position to take a strong action against China. Again, it seems quite difficult. Now, then it's mean, can we say that actually practically no action is possible against China. In the present circumstances, actually, it seems difficult because still we believe, and still now again, it is going to be proved that international law is still more morality. It's a kind of international obligation. So, if any country, especially a country like China, which is very strong and which is the permanent member of United Nations Security Council, is going to defy the international law, is going to defy the order of international organization, then definitely it seems quite difficult to take any action against China. But here, very recently, in US Congress, Chris Smith and Mr. Wright has introduced a legislation that would trip China and other countries that would strip China and other countries of their sovereign immunity if they intentionally made misrepresentation regarding the coronavirus, thereby allowing the US citizens, businessmen, and the local government to sue those government for the deaths and suffering and economic losses caused by the coronavirus pandemic. And we have seen that few cases have been filed in the federal court of United States of America against China for the recovery of the compensation, for the recovery of the loss which has been caused due to this COVID-19 pandemic. Here in this case, in these type of cases, because one petition has been filed by Indian lawyer also. The important issue in such type of cases is, even if the federal court or the Indian court or the any other court is going to pass any order against the China, how much convenient it is going to be to execute the order. Obviously they can, because there is a Chinese investment in their respective countries. Then in that type of circumstances, whether this type of action can be taken against China, where they are going to freeze the accounts, where they are going to freeze the property, where they are going to seize the property, where they are going to freeze the investment of China in their respective countries, is it possible in the present circumstances? Because China is the largest manufacturer, and still we are seeing that all the countries who are blaming China, that China is responsible for COVID-19 crisis, they are still purchasing the medical equipment from China, including America, including India, including different European countries. So in past, definitely these countries have made a mistake, we have made a mistake, and we never realized that we are becoming so much dependent on China for to fulfill our demands. So in such type of circumstances, when the countries are so much dependent upon China, China has invested in their country, these countries has invested in China. So whether it is going to be a convenient decision to implement, to take and to implement, that they are going to seize the investment of China in their respective countries, again it seems quite difficult. Next possibility which can be made is, collectively all the countries are coming together, all the countries who are infected by this COVID-19 virus, they are coming together and they decided to put some pressure either through ICJ or otherwise against China. And in that way, they can do only one thing: by creating a pressure, they can compel China to come for negotiation. And if it happens, what kind of negotiation would be possible? China can definitely try to compensate the losses up to a certain extent for it to save its image. So how China can save its image? China can make some arrangements, promise to provide transparent notice to the world community if another wildlife based virus arises in China. This is one possibility. The second possibility is, China can provide help in developing a vaccine by these developed nations. We should not forget one thing, that there is still a blame against China, that China is already having a vaccine. Still, there is no clear picture whether China is having such kind of vaccine or not, but there are such kind of allegations. So tomorrow it is also possible, when the number of the infected people is going to rise, China is suddenly going to release this secret that China is having the vaccine, and at that point of time, the whole world have no other choice but to purchase these vaccines from China. So at that point of time, maybe China can negotiate with the rest of the world that the China will provide these vaccines at much cheaper rates, or can provide some other kind of assistance in developing some kind of medicines or some other kind of treatment for the COVID-19 patient, or can release some kind of money to provide some compensation to the affected countries. So on the basis of the analysis of all the things, what it seems quite difficult that in the present scenario any strict action is possible against China. We will have to wait, we will have to watch that what kind of action is going to be taken against China if countries have decided to do so. Now it is very much clear that China is gradually replacing US, and China is undoubtedly, it has come up as a very strong international power. So whether the small countries, they will be in the position to counter China effectively when they are so much dependent upon China for all the big and small things. As I told you earlier, that even for a mask we are dependent over China. For the medical equipments we are dependent over China. So we are purchasing these things from China, a country which is itself is responsible for spreading COVID-19 virus. So this is going to be a very big challenge for international community, that in such type of circumstances no action is going to be taken against China. Then what is the utility of having an international law? That's why we have seen that US President Donald Trump is continuously stating that United Nations has become very weak. He has also decided not to pay funds to WHO. So whether it is also possible that a new organization can also come into the existence, whether restructuring of United Nations Security Council is also possible, because if we have given veto power to UNSC, to all the five members of United Nations Security Council, and instead of using, they are misusing it, as it is going to happen in the present case, and no action is possible against any permanent member of this United Nations Security Council. So if they are going to commit a crime, how they will be held responsible? So are we going to accept that United Nations and United Nations Security Council is just to control the weak and the developed nation? So it is going to be a very big challenge for United Nations and United Nations Security Council, that if they are not able to provide an effective remedy in such type of cases, then the countries are going to lose their faith in United Nations Security Council like anything. And if we analyze the pattern of the US president and other countries of the Europe, it seemed quite apparent that these countries do not have full faith in WHO and United Nations. And obviously, developing countries, they are already demanding, because India is also continuously raising this issue, that this is a high time to restructure or to increase the permanent member of UNSC, and India should maybe be the part of that United Nations Security Council. But whether it is going to happen or not, whether China will allow India to enter in UNSC, that is a $1 million question. And it seems quite difficult also that China is going to give opportunity to create another power center in Asia, especially India, because India can be a very suitable replacement for China, because of its weather condition, because of its cheap labor, because of the market, kind of market India is having. India is obviously can be a good replacement. So China is definitely not going to provide very easy entry for India to make itself powerful in any international organization like United Nations. So, with these words, I just want to say that it is very difficult in the present circumstances to say that actually any effective action is possible against China. The only possibility is independently the countries may decide that they are going to regulate the interference of China in their economic affairs by making certain amendments, like India and some other countries had made that in FDI rules they are going to make some restrictions for easy entry of China. So these may be the possible things. The other possible thing is if all the countries come together and they move to ICJ to pass any order against China, and they force China to accept the order if order is passed in their favor. And the third possibility is all the countries should come together and force China to compensate them. That is also that can also be a possibility, but it is possible only in that circumstances when all the affected countries are united against China. Otherwise, it is again going to be extremely difficult. So, with these words, I'm just going to conclude my address. And it was a nice, though I could not take up any, I cannot take any question from you. But if you have any question, you can ask the organizers to send your question to me, and I would love to answer your questions. And let's see, it's a challenging time. Let's see what's going to happen further. Let's see how the world is going to react against China, and whether any direct action is possible, any indirect action is possible, because I believe that still so many things are has to be considered in the coming years. So Abhinav Pandey has asked me a question, that's a policy matter. Why should courts pass order? You know, policy matters can also be interfered by the courts. Policy matters are not immune, because policy should be framed within the existing laws. Like in the case of India, suppose we are suppose because one question was raised when the government decided to declare this lockdown. One question was raised that under what law the government of India has passed this lockdown order. So remember, obviously, the government of India has passed the order against the epidemic under the epidemic law. But suppose if there is no legislation, then too, in the general public interest, to protect the life of the people, the government of India can pass such order. So always remember, whenever the government is going to pass any order, the legality of the order can be challenged on the basis of this thing, that whether this is within the ambit of the existing legal provisions or not. Like if the government is going to make any policy which is in the violation of the basic concept of the constitution, then the policy can be challenged. So any policy can be challenged before the court on this basis, that it is in the violation of the natural law of justice, or this is in the violation of international conventions, or this is in the violation of the basic principles of constitution. So is there any other question? Any other question? I hope I have answered your question, Abhinav. If you have some other question, you can text me. You can take my number from the organizer also. They have my number. And from my side, I have completed. There is another question from Sonu. There is a great need to put sanctions over China under the current scenario. Moreover, the membership should also be examined. Obviously. But the problem is, who will judge the judges? It is very much like that, because China, being the part of the United Nations Security Council, is already having so much of power. So it seems quite difficult that any action can be taken by UNSC. It is almost impossible by UNSC against China. So I've already discussed so many things on the basis of which I tried to prove that international law and is a weak law. And United Nations in the present circumstances, it seems that it is quite weak organization. That's why I'm asking that after post-COVID, requirement of restructuring of the international organization can also be seen. So now I am done.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for your very informative session. And
Thank you so much. I hope you all enjoyed.
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We all
Yeah,
enjoyed
you
your
want to
session.
say something? Okay, it's nice. It was nice to interact, though it was a monologue, but it was nice to, indirectly talking to all of you. Again, I'm extending my thanks to CP Singh sir, to Ahmad sir, and rest of the teachers of Lucknow University, because they were my professors and still they are my teachers. So, thank you to all of you, and my best wishes. Stay at home and stay safe. God bless
Thank you,
you.
ma'am.
Bye bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye.
Thank you.